Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
Hey, it's me, Egbert. E-G-G-B-U-R-T. Check out my website at egbert.com. Now it's back to those two dudes who told me they would bring in big ratings. They better are their history. Here are Brad and John.
Wow, he's thrown down the gauntlet again. We're history if we don't bring in the big ratings.
We're up for the challenge, Brad. We're disruptors.
Yes, we're disruptors. It is the Brad and John Show, bjshow.co. We are on the radio station called Egbert, E-G-G-B-U-R-T. That is our owner. He is, for the most part, a pretty good guy to work for, but he has his moments where he just a little bit goes off the rails. But don't all bosses.
We all have our moments,
Yes,
Brad.
don't all
give
bosses.
Everybody a little bit of grace.
Right, just like my old boss. I can go through all my old bosses in the radio business, and each one of them was sort of interesting in the right way. Probably the guy that I did not appreciate as much as I should was my old boss, Ted Smith, who actually was immigrated to the United States after World War II, was a fighter pilot for the Royal Air Force in World War II. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, interesting guy. And matter of fact, interesting guy in the respect that he was, I mean, like, for a while, you know, the Brits were in the war with the Germans way before we got in. The Brits were in the fight, we didn't get into almost 1942, December 7th, 1941, so the year was almost over. The Brits were fighting the Jerries, so to speak, back in the late 30s. It started in like 38, 39, and I believe the Battle of Britain, if I'm not mistaken, took place in 1940, where the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, tried to essentially decimate London and other parts of England, and if it wasn't for the brave British Royal Air Force pilots, they probably would have been speaking German, but that's a whole nother story.
And we wouldn't have that delicious and flavorful English food that we have today if the Germans had been successful.
What food is that? Okay. This is sort of inside baseball. I'm not going to talk about this for a long time. And John has no idea what I'm going to talk about because this is something that I've been there's only two people that know about this. And now it'll be John 3, and with our listenership, it'll be number 4 and 5. Tomorrow is February 1st. I'm starting something, and I've run this by the two other people, and one of them looked at me like I was crazy. One of them thought it was a smart move. I have a loan on this radio station, okay? And this is a long, complicated story if you want to read the whole thing. But I want to get rid of this. And I want to do the Dave Ramsey thing. And I want to get rid of this. And I want to get rid of it by April 1st. So I have a website up. And matter of fact, John's sitting right there in front of his computer. And he'll get a kick out of this. The website is paythisoff.com. Just like it sounds. Paythisoff, paythisoff.com.
It's loading. Oh, I see a delicious burger.
Yes.
Oh, that looks so good. And I already had breakfast.
It's sort of an interesting website is because when you go to the website, you're going like, okay, what the hell is this? It looks like a fast food website where you can order stuff. And it is a fast food website that I sort of changed into a site where you can buy advertising. And the bottom line of the story is, and this is what's sort of sad about our industry right now. The reason that there are no young people getting into the radio business, there's a couple reasons, but probably the biggest reason is that if you want to open a franchise, you can go to certain banks and they will give you a loan to open a franchise. If you want to buy a piece of property to build a warehouse on, there's banks that'll be more than happy to lend you money. But if you go to a bank and say, hey, I want to buy a radio station, they'll go, hey, it's been nice talking to you. Don't let the door hit you on the butt on the way out. Because of the fact that, a couple of reasons. First off, the industry looks horrible from the big guy, and there's a big difference between the big boys like the iHearts and the Cumuluses of the world, and now even the Odysseys of the world, and the small guys like us. The difference is most of the big guys got themselves into trouble by taking on huge amounts of debts, like $1 billion worth, like essentially that would be what? 10-figure debt, because 100 million would be 9 figures, billion would be 10th figure. So 10 figures of debt. And then the market changed and, COVID came along and they couldn't pay the debt off. And the other aspect of that is if you don't make your loan on a car, they come and repossess your car. If you don't make your loan on your house, if you default on your loan on your house, they come and they foreclose on your house. But the problem with radio is that we have these things called FCC licenses, and for the most part, it's almost impossible for a lender to get the license away from you if you default. So in other words, you can essentially say if you default on a bank loan, you say, hey, guys, not getting my license. And for the most part, they can't because it has to be approved by the FCC. It's very tough. And you have to hire very, very, very expensive attorneys in D.C. It's called an adverse transfer of license, which is very, 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 very tough to get. So that's why the bankers have no interest in lending any money. So therefore, and my situation was I did have a banker that lent me money, actually two of them. And then they decided after a while, we're not. Well, the one bank I paid off. I moved from one bank to another bank. The bank came along and said, hey, come to our bank. We'll be even better. And they were until they got cold feet about the broadcasting business. And then things went downhill from there. And then I ended up with a private investor. So the angle on this story is check it out, paythisoff.com. And I know nobody sitting out there is going to probably, maybe I shouldn't say that. Somebody out there might say, I wonder, and essentially I'm not asking for a handout. This is like not a GoFundMe fund or anything like that. Yeah. This is a buy advertising from me, and my goal is to sell $100,000 in essentially 60 days. Starts tomorrow. Very good. Well, we'll see what the hell happens. And
and I think what's going to help is we'll also put up. I say we. I'm not the one doing the work. Brad, you could put up something that includes a coverage map because I think so many folks listen to us that are in the political world that listen to us on the podcast driving to and from Jeff City or wherever they go throughout their day. But there's folks that listen to us over the air, and I think those folks would like to see a coverage map, see if you advertise over the air where folks can hear the signal.
Well, right now, that's not that great, and I don't want to go into too many details on that because, once again, that's another issue that I've had to deal with, and we're in the process. As a matter of fact, I had a guy call me just the other day saying, what happened to your signal? We don't have the signal we had once upon a time in this station, and there's a whole crazy reason for that, which, quite honestly, I'm addressing, and there's another issue there. We're trying to, find another tower to get onto or some kind of stuff like that.
I got you.
And that's gotten very, 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 very complicated because everybody wants to have their cell phone work, but nobody wants to have the cell phone tower near them. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. Yeah. Why it's to the point where everybody complains. My cell phone doesn't work on this highway. Well, that's because that area you're in won't allow them to put a tower up in that area. Why is that?
So should folks go to paythisoff.com or should they go to egbert.com if they're interested in buying over the air or pre-rolls, or where should they go?
Well, that's going to be part of paythisoff.com. It's not done yet. There's 3 packages on there. If you go to shop, I don't know if you've gone into that.
I'm there right now.
Okay,
yeah.
There's various packages on there, and there'll be some more packages on there. Right now, there's 6 packages, which are, quite honestly, a little bit on the high end. They're like, if you have a large advertising budget, those would be the ones in the first 6 packages, and there would be some other ones in there. But yeah, a good example of that is right now, if you listen to, and the interesting thing is, not only do a lot of people listen to it on the podcast, but they also listen to it now that I've been uploading this on to YouTube. We get a lot of YouTube traffic.
Yeah, I believe it.
Because once again, everybody's different. Some people, they listen to their podcasts on their phone, and they're literally on a podcast. They're on what's the
app, the podcast app,
the podcast app, sure. and there's several podcast apps out there. It's not only just the Apple app, but there's quite a few podcast apps you can listen to. But and there's all sorts of different services. There's Spotify and stuff like that you can listen through it. But there's a lot of people who listen on YouTube, not necessarily because, and there's no video. There is video. It's just a static logo shot of ours that stays on the entire time. But a lot of people will do that. As a matter of fact, I do that from time to time. I did it yesterday. I was listening to a guy yesterday who had a very interesting, something I was interested in on YouTube, and essentially he was just a talking head in front of he was, showing like graphics and stuff like that just to reinforce his point. But I listened to it for probably about 20, 30 minutes just driving down the highway on YouTube, but obviously not watching it. Well, I'd watch it, and I put the car in autopilot, but no, seriously. And anyway, we get a lot of traffic on YouTube, and that is, is growing more and more. So paythisoff.com. Check it out, paythisoff.com. Okay, John, I'm pretty much out of things to talk about today, believe it or not. We talked about Corey Bush. Anything you want to finish up the show with?
Yeah, I would just say there's a number of pieces that we have up today that are pretty interesting. I would, again, recommend that folks go listen to Denny Hoskins. Gives a really good overview. Brad teased a little bit about the initiative petition process. And if you have any concerns or questions about the whole, what is a concurrent majority or what are the proposals there, Denny lays it out. And, of course, I have the timestamps up, where if you don't want to listen to the whole interview, you can just listen to those particular pieces. So we might give, as we used to say in the corporate world, Brad, if we would end the meeting 5 minutes early, we'd say, oh, we're going to give everybody 5 minutes back. And tomorrow we might give people 5 minutes back too. Brad and I both might have something going on tomorrow and have to leave 5 minutes early.
Well, you got to leave 5 minutes early tomorrow?
Tomorrow I do, yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. We'll I tell you what.
And we're doing our scheduling here on the air.
You know what? The way this is an over-the-air audible like this. The way I've got things set up is that if that's the case, then we'll have you leave 20 minutes early. We'll just run 2 segments.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Because the way I've got things set up is that, and this is sort of inside baseball kind of stuff, is that right now there are segments that could be playing instead of you and I live. So the idea being is we have to keep pretty much to the format clock, because especially in the last hour, the last section, we have to hit that top of the hour at 8 o'clock.
At a perfect time.
Right, for Armstrong and Getty.
And for hardcore listeners who noticed the other day that we did not have a segment A, on occasion, I'll use the third person here. John's role as a patriarch comes in, and there are some extenuating family circumstances for which I serve my patriarch duties proudly. And tomorrow would be one then if we leave a bit early. And Monday morning was one. It's rare at which it affects our schedule. Well, but Monday was one, and Brad was very gracious about it. So
folks,
thank you, Brad.
Let me tell you the true story. John called me at 7 o'clock, and he says, Brad, I'm just leaving the east side. Oh, my God.
And I said, I'm leaving. I left the Hildebrand booth that they have in many of those establishments there,
place
where you get some it's the old champagne room, but they call it the Hildebrand room.
Right. The place was rocking, and I couldn't leave, and I'm going to be late. Can we just go on at 7:20? No problem, John.
And, hey, here's a blind item that we might follow up on tomorrow. A longtime listener of yours sent me a text message the other day who listens to us in a different state, and he absolutely remembers Brad Hildebrand, and he loved the old KSLQ, and he remembers listening to you for years, Brad.
Who in the world's that?
I'm not going to tell you. It's a teaser. People got to tune in tomorrow.
Boy.
And maybe we'll fulfill them, and maybe we won't. Teasing is my love language, Brad. Delayed gratification is how I like when people speak to me. I'm a delayed gratification guy. That's my love language.
Oh, boy. Man, in fact, there's all sorts of interesting things on the various websites. Look at this right now. Super Bowl champ blasts White House policies as he teases presidential campaign, which is sort of bizarre. Taylor Swift's viral moment helps secure major NFL deal for wife of 49ers star. This whole bizarre thing with Taylor Swift. My
theory is she's going to be president. Biden is going to step down. Taylor Swift turns 35 in December.
That's right.
And she can become president in January.
But see, what's interesting is Taylor Swift, I think, has either done herself a favor or disfavor by becoming part of the NFL, because the true hardcore NFL fans hate it that she's involved in it, because they're going like, we don't care about Taylor Swift. We want to see football.
It's unfair to say all, but many of them. Correct.
Right.
I think it's fair to say many of them.
And the flip side of the coin is supposedly the TV ratings for this season are the highest ever. And especially the Kansas City games where she shows up.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but think of the merchandise. I know in my personal life, women who are not devout football fans who have purchased more than $100 worth of Chiefs equipment or NFL stuff, NFL, Taylor's version sweatshirts, all kinds of Kansas City Chiefs stuff for their friends and their family and their kids, all because of Taylor Swift.
And once again, it's one of those things where it's like there's a dividing line, and you can say, okay, this side of the equation is people are ticked. This side of the equation, it couldn't get any better for them. You know what I mean? They're like, this absolutely. Is Nirvana. We love this Taylor Swift thing. A love story, and it's interesting was going all the way to the Super Bowl. Now, wouldn't this be fascinating if the Chiefs won again and the whole bit, and people go, it's all because of Taylor Swift.
Or it's all because the games are fixed, which if you go down that YouTube
it's like
wormhole, Brad, you can find NFL players who talk about games being fixed and point spreads being fixed.
It's like WWE. Okay, we have to go. Say goodbye, John.
Bye, guys. See you tomorrow.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T. John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?